Inkbound is a unique title that thrusts players into battling a great evil that threatens to destroy every tale, legend, and history immortalized in the books of the Athenian. Inkbound made its entrance on Steam back in May and is currently sitting in early access. The game aims to bring some fresh takes to the roguelike world by introducing a fluid turn-based combat that prizes freedom of movement and encourages daring experimentation, offering a high replayability value that gets you excited on trying a new run over and over again. And if you've sunk countless hours into beloved titles such as Slay the Spire, Spelunky, or Risk of Rain 2, you know exactly what we're talking about here. So if you're itching to uncover whether Inkbound has the potential to become the next gaming obsession for you and your friends, you've come to the right place. We've gathered all the vital information you need to make that crucial decision, so turn the copium all the way up as we dive into the world of Inkbound. At a first glance, Inkbound might feel a bit overwhelming. However, beneath the surface lies a surprisingly straightforward set of features. And as you unravel its intricacies, you start to see the game through entirely different lenses. In Inkbound, each class known as an aspect starts with 3 skills named bindings, and as you progress on a run, you pick up an additional 2 extra bindings and get the chance to apply several mutations to them. You'll find several consumables that you have to juggle between 2 slots and loot or purchase up to 7 items known as vestiges. During combat, you spend action points, here known as will, for every move and binding you cast, and I guess that's pretty much it. Sure, there are a lot of possible interactions with vestiges and bindings, but here's a major positive to Inkbound. It does an excellent job of telling you how everything in its realm works. Every status effect can be inspected at any given moment, and the language used to describe all interactions is both simple and straight to the point. All attacks are nicely telegraphed and there are no hidden damage or unpredictable crazy interactions. What you see is what you get, which is tremendously helpful when strategizing your next moves. This player experience makes the game quite accessible, as it helps to break that entry barrier that roguelike games often have. The sheer abundance of items, status effects, and possible combinations of skills can easily overwhelm newcomers to these types of games. But as we immerse ourselves deeper into these systems and become familiar with everything, we actually end up developing this desire for even more layers of complexity to stir that already simmering melting pot of possibilities. And rest assured, this feeling is undeniably present in Inkbound. But before diving deep into all things combat, let us pause for a moment and talk about the overall experience of embarking on this adventure with your trusted companions by your side. As you embark on your first journey into the world of Inkbound, you'll wake up at the shores of the endless sea of ink. And after a sprinkle of narrative here and there, you'll get the opportunity to pick your aspect, customize its looks, and explore its fighting abilities during a quick tutorial on how combat works. Your victory would then grant you access to the Athenian. The Athenian acts as a social hub where players can meet with other adventurers and form parties up to 4 players to venture into dives together, which funnily enough feels more alive than any of Diablo 4's towns. Hell, people even use the game's chat here. Which brings us to an important topic. Like many recent titles, Inkbound is yet another always online game, and while this may be a non-issue for most nowadays, we do understand that it can be a decisive factor for some. So if you're looking for a way to create private sessions or play Inkbound without an internet connection, you might want to wait for a few more patches before buying the game. In the Athenian, assembling a group and embarking on dives is a really straightforward process. You can either use the in-game party finder or invite your friends directly through Steam's friends list. There are no unnecessary restrictions such as level or rank requirements. Together, you can then pick up the book that will dictate the theme and challenges of your next adventure and embark on a dive filled with, ink. And here's where the fun begins. During your dive, you'll be offered several choices, each capable of steering your path towards bountiful rewards and unexpected encounters. As you navigate the pages of each tale, you'll cross paths with characters that are essential for completing quests. You'll find shops that will grant you the opportunity to acquire valuable vestiges and binding augmentations. You'll fight minions, villains, and guardians, as well as being able to craft a different build with every dive. The length of these dives can vary a lot. even stretching for hours depending on your party composition, the group pacing, and the abundance of vestiges and bindings that grace your path. Having said that, it's important to praise Shiny Shoe here for implementing a rather seamless recovery system to Inkbound. We were delighted to know that in the face of a disconnection or a crash, all of our progress remained intact. And even though that only happened once or twice to us in the hundreds of dives we've had so far, they didn't affect our fun and experience in any way, which is something I can hardly say about other titles. And I guess that's a good thing about Inkbound being an always online game, since this particular feature certainly adds a lot of value to cooperative play. Now it's time to circle back to combat. So what the hell does fluid turn-based combat even mean? Well, in Inkbound, combat is split into two phases, the player's turn and the enemy turn. During your party's turn, each player can act simultaneously, ensuring a seamless flow of action and movement, with barely, if any, downtime between player actions. You can experiment with the cost of will as you meticulously plan your every move. For example, you can tell exactly how much will you have left after moving to a particular location and casting a binding on a few enemies. And on top of that, you'll also know how much health you and your enemies will have at the end of each turn, as well as the exact amount of damage that will be applied across the board from all different sources. This allows you to go insanely fast when the decisions are easy and slow down when you need to strategize more deeply and play the next turns ahead of time. And since combat is where you spend most of your time when playing Inkbound, having this degree of freedom and information is really just the icing on the cake. Now, we did take some time to adjust to this particular feature. As we embarked on our initial dive, we weren't really synchronizing our positions or even taking each other's bindings and vestiges into consideration, which led us to some harsh spots during combat. But after experimenting with interactions and understanding how everything connects to each other, we slowly progressed further and further, and then we got our butts handed to us on the first final boss battle. But here's one of the nice things about playing this game cooperatively. Since you'll be offered random vestiges and augmentations on every dive, having more players in a group means that potential for synergistic builds expands immensely well. You can tailor your arsenal towards a more supportive role, like repositioning enemies and debilitating their defenses, and also applying buffs upon your allies. Or maybe focus on dealing huge amounts of damage to a single enemy to shred high-value targets before they get too powerful to be taken down. Add 3 extra players to that mix and the possibilities are just endless. It's truly within the bounds of teamwork that the true essence of Inkbound flourishes. As we experimented more and more with different bindings, vestiges, and augmentations as a group, we started to accumulate several wins and unlock new content, which brings us to our next and final point, the in-game progression. An addictive thing about these games is that progression, when done properly, is a captivating element that breathes life into each new run, adding some sort of variation or expanding the world for you to venture forth into harder and harder challenges. In Inkbound, quests serve as the driving force on that front, offering diverse challenges and milestones that are woven into the fabric of the game. Some quests simply require repeated play to amass huge numbers, while others challenge you to adopt specific playstyles, embrace designated aspects, or traverse distinct tales and regions. And it's by completing those quests that players will gain access to more diverse and powerful vestiges, as well as new aspects with unique playstyles and cosmetics to spice things up. Inkbound also provides players with 2 distinct options for dives. You can either go casual or go ranked. While casual dives offer a more relaxed experience and it's a great way to complete quests, ranked dives present escalating challenges as you climb the ranks. In these dives, enemies will receive buffs and players will face debuffs, potentially altering the effectiveness of builds you previously thought were dominant. Currently, ranking up doesn't really grant you any additional rewards from what we've seen yet, aside from a custom badge to display on your profile. However, the higher your rank, the harder these dives become. Every rank increases the overall difficulty of combat by a lot, making beating dives much harder without proper strategy and good builds. And since the game is still in early access, we do anticipate future developments that will integrate ranking systems with other rewards and systems. Now, there's only a tiny little detail here. There is a battle pass. Inkbound is a paid game with a battle pass and a cosmetics shop. But honestly, from all of the battle passes implementations we've seen, this is definitely on the tame side of them. There are no pay-to-win mechanics, and both the premium and free passes generously reward players with decent amounts of the premium currency. Currently, during the early access, you can use the code Early Access Thanks to get some free shinies for yourself. If you add those to the rewards from the free battle pass, you've got yourself enough shinies to buy the premium one, which with its generous rewards of shinies ensures that you will not have to purchase another pass as long as you remain dedicated to playing the game and conquering the seasonal quests and milestones. Which then brings us to what's on the horizon for Inkbound. Shiny Shoe has been actively listening to the player feedback and sharing their vision for the game. They have recently unveiled a roadmap teasing a major update scheduled for August, which will introduce some exciting additions such as new aspects, tails, customizable starting bindings, the ability to save and resume runs, and many more. Additionally, offline runs are also on the radar for future implementations, which we think is such an amazing thing for the game. Inkbound does seem to be dedicated to offer even more thrilling experiences for players in the future. So here's our overall feeling about the game. While Inkbound doesn't really prioritize narrative and storytelling, it manages to weave a surprising amount of lore into its world. The art style and character design all align beautifully with the thematic elements of that lore. However, the true strength of Inkbound lies in its meticulously crafted combat design and the captivating interactions between aspects and vestiges. They elevate the game experience and really keep players engaged in the strategy of the game. And to summarize the overall experience, let's walk through a quick list of pros and cons. Inkbound is a game best played with friends, that's for sure, and it has been a refreshing co-op experience for us. Plenty of times we've seen games that would be perfect if they had co-op, and we think that Inkbound hit the nail on the head with its design on that front, especially due to its easy to recover from disconnects and crashes and retain your entire progression. There's a really decent build variation here. There's a good amount of skills, classes, and items to experiment with. Actually, there's quite a lot of items in the game, each changing how you can potentially approach your skills and position yourself during combat. In Inkbound, experimenting with builds is really fun. There's a constant reevaluation of what's good and bad every time a new choice is offered to you. It gets you pumped up about trying different things on every single run, or trying to recreate a really specific build that was so good you just want to keep playing it over and over again. For the completionists out there are a lot of boxes to tick, which in turn reward with new ways to play the game and progress even further. It just really makes you want to come back and play it more. Interacting with other players to craft different strategies is one of the best things about this game. Being able to plan and act out scenarios simultaneously due to the fluid turn-based combat system is just amazing. A good strategy allows you to keep your resources and carry them over to the next combat, getting you further and further into your runs. As we've mentioned, every status effect can be inspected at any given moment, and the language used to describe all interactions is both simple and straight to the point. Everything is nicely telegraphed and you know exactly what will happen between turns. Now there's also a few bad things. The first one is there's definitely some need for balancing. There are many one-size-fits-all builds that work regardless of the threat in front of you, as well as some really weird interactions where you can end up with bindings that cost 0 will and they refresh on every use. So you're perpetually doing damage and clearing every monster on a single turn without them being able to fight back. But since the game is still on early access, it's understandable that these things will happen. The more they add to the game, the more intricate and complex these interactions become. There's also a lot of different status effects that aren't that much different. And I mean, there's quite a few of them, such as shock, frostbite, poison, bleed, burn, and a lot of the builds you can craft are actually around those status effects. But most of them are related to damage in Inkbound, which in contrast with other RPG games, they generally tend to utilize other mechanics around these things, such as introducing loss of turn or elemental interactions that affect the environment and other characters. We do believe there's tons to explore around these status effects which hasn't been done yet in Inkbound due to a fear of overcomplicating things. The only thing we feel the game currently lacks is in its variety of arenas and monsters. Of course, this will be heavily changed in future patches, but we would love to see differently shaped arenas with dynamic obstacles and maybe some dynamic challenges, as well as new tales with completely different monsters and visuals. Again, completely acceptable for an early access title. And if you're not a completionist, it can get stale really quickly. The concept of a run having an end goal means that they have well-defined number of steps from start to finish. There isn't really a main storyline or even a big challenge that's too hard to beat until you level up a little bit and then you come back later on. There's also no element of big choices that impact the game between runs that moves you forward into beating the game. Every new thing that you unlock, either it being an item or a new class, will be available inside that same framework you've been playing so far. Sometimes during a run, it even feels that you finally gotten to the point where you're having the most fun, but then you're at the end of the run already and you know the fun is about to end pretty soon. Having said all of that, we've played the game for way more hours than we were expecting. We just got too excited with the increasing challenges of ranked dives, unlocking new aspects, and trying to use newly acquired veggies in different ways. So if you're looking for some short session type of game where it's all about playing together with your friends, we definitely recommend Inkbound. But that's it for us today. If you're looking for more co-op content, consider subscribing to the channel. Thank you for watching and we'll see you on the next one.